Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today we're going to be doing a triple unboxing. I'm calling this the Roman unboxing because we have three games, all from GMT, all designed by Richard Berg and Mark Herman from the Great Battles of History. We have, in a somewhat chronological order as far as subject matter at least, we have Spqr, which was Great Battles of History Volume 2. Then we have the Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe Edition. This was just recently released. This is actually a compilation of several of the of Great Battles of History content, several modules, I suppose you could say. And then, of course, we also have Cataphract, which was actually a little bit later in the Roman Empire. This is Great Battles of History Volume 8, and this covers the reconquest of the Roman Empire back when Justinian was emperor and the seat of the actual empire was not in Rome itself, but rather in Constantinople. So let's take a look and see what's inside these three boxes. We'll start off with Spqr. As I mentioned, it is actually the oldest of these games, but it is also the one that covers the earliest period of history, at least as we're talking about Roman battles. So that's coming up right now. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with Spqr, which covers the earliest era of the three games that we're going to be unboxing today. So let's take a quick look at the back of the box here. Okay, so it says, for the Roman Republic, the path to military preeminence in the Mediterranean world was neither easy nor direct. The Romans were blessed with a large patriotic pool of citizen soldiers who were the salvation of the country on many occasions. However, they were cursed by a political system that often gave command of armies to inept consuls who were inflexible military leaders. Time after time, the Roman Republic suffered horrific defeats due to these circumstances, but survived, learned to adapt, and ultimately perfected the most capable and powerful army of the age. Explore the evolution of the Roman military system from the early battles against the brilliant but chaotic Pyrrhus of Epirus, then against Hannibal of Carthage, one of the great captains of history in some of the major battles of the Second Punic War. The original Spqr game contained 5 classic ancient battles. Deluxe Spqr contains those 5: Cynocephalae, Zama, Cannae, Bagradas Plains, and Beneventum, plus 9 more battles. Most of the new Spqr battles come from long out of print Spqr game modules Pyrrhic Victory, Consul for Rome, Africanus, War Elephant, Jugurtha, and from C3I magazine. Step back into the pages of ancient history. You have been elected Consul for Rome. Take command of your Roman legions, lead them to victory, and see if you can return to Rome leading a triumphal procession. And remember, all glory is fleeting. And at the bottom, you see here it says Spqr is an acronym for Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the Roman people. Okay, so looking in here, right, we see we've got actually a list of the Great Battles of History series, of which this is the second entry. Julius Caesar and Conquest of Gaul, I believe, are the two that are combined in the Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe Edition that we'll be looking at here in a little bit. So just kind of looking at our game contents over here on this side, we do see we've got 5 full-color counter sheets, 5 double-sided maps, a rule booklet, 2 scenario booklets, player aid cards, and 1 10-sided die. Newly added, we have a Barbarian counter sheet, Barbarian double-sided map, and Barbarian scenario booklet. On our complexity, we're looking at a 6, and our solitaire suitability, we're looking at a 9. Those are on a 7, sorry. Those are on the 1 to 9 scale. Game designers, as mentioned before, were Richard Berg and Mark Herman. Developer was Alan Ray. Art director, Roger McGowan. Production coordinator, Tony Curtis. And our executive producers, Tony Curtis, Roger McGowan, Andy Lewis, Gene Billingsley, and Mark Simonich. All right, so let's take a look and see what we've got inside the box. Okay, so baggies, always useful, especially when you've got a ton of counter sheets like this game does. Here's our 10-sided die. All right, so here's the Barbarian Booklet. And you can see it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 battles. Lautule, Tifernum, Centinum, Telamon, and Cremona. The times range from 315 BC to 200 BC. Get a kind of a standard look here. You get your deployment. This would be Lautule, rather. I'm sure I'm butchering some of these names, but apologies for that. And you also have to deal with my accent. Sorry, as always. Now we've got our Spqr Deluxe Scenario Pack. This one has, looks like 9 scenarios. 1, 2, 3, 6, 9. Yep. Heraclea, Ausculum, Trebia, Bacula, Metaurus, Lipa, Great Plains, Magnesia, and the Muthil River, ranging from 280 BC to 109 BC. And we've got another scenario booklet for the 4th edition. This previous one was 2nd edition. This has 5 more: Beneventum, Bagradus Plains, Cannae, Zama, and Cynocephalae, ranging from 275 BC all the way up to 197 BC. Here's our rule book. So 39 pages it looks like, approximately. Not counting, well, 38 not counting your index. So the great battles of history are probably medium to slightly heavier than medium complexity. Here are our maps. So we can take a look at one of the maps here. So the maps are double-sided typically, which lets you get a little bit extra, saves you some material cost, obviously, if you're GMT Games. Here we have Beneventum, as you can see. On the other side of this one is Zama. This is a pretty plain battlefield. We have a little bit of river up top, a road, and a whole lot of open space on which to do battle. So obviously in a game like this, you're going to have a lot of maps. So that's 2 maps. Then we have the Cannae map, and backside of Cannae. We can open up Cannae, I guess. So here's the Cannae map, which again is pretty much an open plain. You can see the city of Cannae here on the side. And the other side of Cannae has Cynocephalae from 197 BC. This one obviously has some hills. You have a ridge basically of peaks here in the middle. So that would be 4 different maps so far and counting. We also have map for Metaurus on one side. So that's going to be 6 maps here. I'm not going to open all of these up. We have Heraclea, 8 maps, 10 maps, 12 maps. So you got 12 maps. You've got player aid cards, 2 of them. So here on this one, we'd see we've got you've got your class of spears and swords, shock superiority, shock combat results. On the front, we've got a movement cost chart. The die roll of doom, I like this, that's nice. The rally table, elephant rampage table. And on the back, we have stacking charts, voluntary movement, route retreat movement, etc. We have 2 of these. that are identical. Then we have a second player aid card, also 2 copies. Front contains the cohesion hits. You got automatic, TQ, and special checks. Summary of orders and line commands, command summary chart, missile range and results chart, the Roman camp terrain effects. And on the back, leadership checks and leadership casualties. Some Roger McGowan goodness here at the bottom. And now we have a game turn track with the sequence of play. Sequence of play is leader activation phase, orders phase, which has movement and missile fire and shock combat segments. The momentum phase, or return to A, which would be leader activation. Route and reload and withdrawal phase. Nothing on the back of that. And here are our counters. So we have 5 full sheets of counters plus the Barbarian counters, which is a half sheet. As you can see, this says sheet number 6. It's a half sheet. They're all 2-sided. And you can see you've got some Romans up here. At least I think these are Romans. And then you have various barbarians. Very nice. They're the smaller counters, as you would expect. And we've got counter sheet 1 here. There's Hannibal. Get some double width counters, Macedon. Counter sheet 2. Scipio, Varro, Pallius, Regulus. So you have some Roman leaders on this one. Very colorful. You can see the detail of the artwork is very nice on these counters. We have some markers here. This is sheet number 3. We have markers. Then sheet 4 comes with the scenario pack. So again, we have some additional Roman leaders here. Lucius Cornelius Scipio, Emilius, etc. Domitius. And then we have sheet number 5. So you have your Seleucid, double width, some African, Epirus or Pyrrhus, and some more counters here at the bottom for missiles being low, route march, etc. Athenians here. So that is SPQR. And we will now move on to looking at the just released Great Battles of Julius Caesar. Okay, so here we have Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe Edition, just released in 2022. So we are going to first take a look at the back of the box, just as we did with the other one, with SPQR, that would be. So reading the back here, we have some images of the counters here at the top, including Caesar himself. You can see we have Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe Edition is a reprinting of 2 classic Great Battles of History titles, Caesar the Civil Wars, published in 1994, and Caesar Conquest of Gaul, published in 1996 and reprinted in 2006, along with an additional 8 battles published in their supporting modules. Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe Edition traces the evolution of the Roman military system from early battles against various foreign foes, Caesar's wars in Gaul, followed by Caesar's wars against his Roman rivals, and culminating with the Roman invasion of Britain a century later. The scenarios vary in size, with 4 large battles using 1.5 map sheets, 6 small battles using a half map sheet, and 12 using a full-size map sheet. Counter mix includes 43 distinct cohort-style legions, a host of specialty-type auxiliary units, numerous tribal infantry and cavalry units, and some old favorites from SPQR, elephants, chariots, and even the double-sided phalanx. Along with the typical set peace battles. Several battles feature the use of fortifications, one an amphibious invasion Roman style, and one a full-blown naval battle using a subset of the war galley rules. So we include 20 battles in this game. From Marius and Sulla, we have Cirta in 106 BCE, Vercellae 101 BCE, Cheronea in 86 BCE. Those are from the Jugurtha and Dictator modules. Then you have Caesar's Gallic Wars, Bibracta 58, the Rhine 58, the Sabis 57, Bay of Biscay 56, Britannia 55, Lutetia 52, and Gergovia 52. So most of those are from conquest of Gaul, except for Gergovia. Then you have the Civil War battles, Dyrrachium, Lesnica, Pharsalus, Nicopolis, Zella, Ruspina, Thapsus, and Munda. All of those, except for Nicopolis and Zella, are from the Civil Wars, Caesar's the Civil Wars. The other two are from Veni Vidi Vici. And then you have Roman conquest of Britannia, the Medway in 43 of the Christian era, and Wales in 51 of the Christian era, and those are from Caradicus. So our game contents: 7 1/2 counter sheets, 6 22 by 34 back printed maps, 1 11 by 17 inch back printed map, 4 11 by 17 inch player aid cards, 1 8.5 by 11 inch turn record and route point tracks display, 2 8.5 by 11 inch player aid cards, a rules book, a scenarios book, a naval rules book, 1 8.5 by 11 inch naval rules player aid card, 2 6-sided dice, 1 10-sided die. Game design, as usual for the great battles of history, we have Mark Herman and Richard Berg, development by Alan Ray, graphic artist Roger McGowan, Mark Simonich, and Charlie Kibler, and production coordinator Tony Curtis. So this is a game that can be played by 1 to 4 players, 14 and up. 2 to 9 hours play time. Complexity is a 6 on the 1 to 9 scale, and solitaire suitability is a 7 on the 1 to 9 scale. All right, so that is Great Battles of Julius Caesar. There he is. And so now we will go and see what we have in the box. All right. So this box, unlike SPQR, we've got the counter sheets right at the top. So here's our half sheet. Great Battles of Julius Caesar, sheet number 8. So the 7.5. This is a half sheet, obviously. So that's sheet number 8. Now we go back to sheet 1, which is what you would expect. And right up here, left top corner, Mr. Julius Caesar himself. There's Marcus Antonius, better known as Mark Antony. There's probably some other famous people in here as well. Caesar's actually got a couple different ones here. We've got a Caesar here as well. Probably varies based on what scenario you're playing, would be my guess. Then we have some more counters. This is sheet 2. Looks like we've got some galleys here. Sheet 3. Sheet 3 front and back. Sheet 4. Numidia, Phrygia, front and back. Counter sheet number 5. These would be barbarians by the looks of it. I see probably Gallic, Cimbri, Britons over here. Arverni rather, down here. Again, double-sided, of course. Sheet number 6. Still more forces. A lot of various units in this game, apparently. We have a lot of unit counters. And sheet number 7 gives you your markers. Also gives you a few more counters here for the... These are the Parisi, I guess. Very nice. Same kind of classic artwork on the counters. Here's our scenario book, and this is a thick book, 80 pages long, with our developer notes on the back. So you've got 80 pages of scenarios in here. This is, I mean, here's the famous Battle of Pharsalus. So this was Caesar defeating Pompey in their civil war. And you can see the setup, how it's lined up and everything, the historical background, pre-game notes. This is a 2-mapper. You got deployment for the senatorial army of Pompey the Great, the army of Julius Caesar. So that is a thick book, 80 pages. Okay, so we have the rule book. So this rule book goes 47 pages or 48 with the index. Of course, you have some charts and things in here. Command systems for the tribes, for the Pontic. Roman command system. The Naval Rules. This is a thinner one. Obviously, we only have one. We have, it's 11 pages. We have one scenario that involves a naval battle, I believe, and it's based on the War Galley, which was one of the entries in the great battles of history. Map-wise, so here we go back to looking at some maps again. So here's Pharsalus, and this is this is one that is a double-sided. We have Munda on the other side here. The maps, these classic maps, I mean, you know, if you're used to playing, you know, World War II games or something where you're in Europe and you've got a bunch of cities and roads and railroads and all kinds of things like that, even if you're playing in, say, the Eastern Front in Russia, the maps are going to have a lot more detail on them than these. Ancient armies, they would meet on plains. Sometimes there would be rivers, some hills maybe. The Romans would also build, of course, camps, and they would fortify those camps. So you would have something like that. Here's one that actually has, this is Britannia for the 55 BCE game, and we do have some forest on here, as well as basically a beach, essentially, and then some grass, I suppose, here. So you have that, and then you also would have, this is Lutetia, where we have the Sacana River at the top, and you have your map key here that shows that this, you know, you don't have a whole lot of various terrain. We have woods, clear, marsh, and a major river. So again, because of the nature of warfare in ancient times, they needed large open areas in which to fight. So these maps are going to be relatively simple, just as we saw in Spqr. Not a whole lot of interesting terrain features. This one has a camp with some towers on it. This would be the Rhine, Caesar versus Ariovistus from 58 BC. Then we have here, this one looks like it's got a camp on it, or a city probably. This is Gergovia in Gaul. I can get it open. This one has a little bit more detail to it. You have lake, various levels of terrain, up level 1 all the way up to level 4, rocky level 5, and then all the way up to level 8. So you do have some elevation involved in this one. You have Gallic camp, sunken road, towers and walls, a gate, the wall for Gergovia, which Gergovia is over here, obviously. So this would be one of your more probably complex maps, I would say. And here's another map. This would be the camp. This one is from the Civil War, because you can see Pompeius, that's Pompey the Great. And this is the Battle of Munda in Spain. And we have this guy. This would be Thapsis Africa, 46 BCE. And you can see again, we have a camp here. The map key down at the bottom. Sea, 2 levels of terrain, a salt marsh, towers and walls, and a gate. Here's Caesar's fort down here at the bottom. This is obviously the Mediterranean. They say Mare Africum, which just means African Sea, but this is probably, looking at it, maybe Tunisia. And then we also have here our final map, Cirta, the Bay of Biscay, 56 BCE. So this covers two. This is probably the Bay of Biscay, I'm guessing, is the naval battle. This map is basically blank, and it's only single-sided. So that would be our, I would guess this would be our naval battle map. Then we have our player aid cards, somewhat similar to what we saw in SPQR. We have our movement cost chart, clash of swords, shock superiority, shock combat results. Another player aid card that is identical, because you 2 players, you get 2 player aid cards for each. Here's player aid card 2 with cohesion hit and TQ checks, just like we saw in the other game. The command summary chart, summary of orders, legion line commands, and our stacking charts again for voluntary movement and route movement. And there's actually a third one here, which has our leadership checks, the casualty table for leaders, our die roll of doom again, the elephant rampage table, rally table, and on the back, sequence of play, which is a little bit different than what we saw in SPQR. This has an auxiliaries phase at the start, then the leader activation phase, then your orders phase, momentum, or return to B, which again would be the leader activation phase. Your camp movement rather, route and reload phase, and withdrawal phase. So obviously the Great Battles of History is a system, so the rules and the sequence of play are going to be relatively similar between the various games. Here's our route tracking point card with our turn tracker and our route points for the various factions. We have Caesarians, Romans, Senatorials, non-Romans. So you can use that. Then we have our naval charts and tables. You got wind, fatigue, command transfer, individual squadrons, grappling, disengage, boarding, missile fire, and firefight. This game comes with 3 dice, a 10-sided and 2 6-sided, and our typical bags, which of course with all the counters comes in really handy. So that is our Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe Edition. We're going to move on to Cataphract, which of these 3 is the only one that's not really a deluxe edition. I mean, I guess it kind of is because it does combine elements from various games in it, but it is a lot less beefy in terms of size of box and what's inside the box. So we're going to look at that here right now. And here we have Cataphract. So this is the third of what I'm calling the Roman Trilogy. We have Belisarius here right in the middle. And this one includes these battles, plus it also has the campaign game Justinian, which is a completely different game, but they threw it in the same box here with this Great Battles of History Volume 8 Cataphract, the reconquest of the Roman Empire, designed, as are all the Great Battles of History games, by Richard Berg and Mark Herman, and the art director, Roger McGowan. So we do have the Udus River, Catalonian Fields, Dara, Callinicum, Tricameron, Cena Gallica, Tagenae, and Casilinum, I guess, ranging from 447 AD to 554 AD, or CE if you would prefer the new way of describing those things. So here we have the back of the box. Let's zoom in here. Okay. So it says, Cataphract is defined as a heavily armored cavalryman modeled either on the Sarmatians or the Persians. He was the ultimate mounted armored warrior of the ancient world, trained in both shock and missile combat. Cataphract portrays the development of the art of war wrought by the early Byzantine Empire, aka Eastern Roman Empire, just a little note there, during the reign of the Emperor Justinian under the great generals Belisarius and Narses. During this period, the Byzantine Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire, for a brief period of time, recaptured a large portion of what was formerly the Western Roman Empire. Although successful in its attempts to reconquer Italy and North Africa, the Byzantine Empire's resources were insufficient to hold on to its gains. Cataphract covers all of the major battles that defined this era. To place these battles in their proper historical context, the campaign game Justinian is enclosed, which covers the quest to reconquer the Roman Empire under one ruler. Thus, Cataphract contains the decisive battles of the era, a campaign game, plus the battles from the Attila module, Udus River from 447 AD, and the Catalaunian fields from 451 AD. Sorry, I forgot to slide that up. Our complexity looks like it's right in the middle here. That would be a 5. And our solitaire suitability is actually an 8. So the other two that we just looked at, Spqr and Julius Caesar Deluxe, are actually 6 complexity and 7 solitaire. So it's a little different. It also gives you a list of the various battles that are included in the base game. So these are the ones that are not part of the Attila module. Dara, Callinicum, Tricameron, Taginae, and Casilinum, plus Cena Gallica, which was a naval battle. But you would need War Galley to play this scenario, which I do not have, unfortunately. Here we have some sample counters, and then the info on the design. As I mentioned earlier, game designed by Richard Berg and Mark Herman. Developed by Alan Ray, art director Roger McGowan, producers Tony Curtis, Roger McGowan, Andy Lewis, Gene Billingsley, and Mark Simonich. The game counter art was done by Roger McGowan and Michael Lemick. The game maps were done by Mark Simonich, and package art design by Roger McGowan. So let's take a look and see what we have inside the box. All right. So right away, we see Justinian, the rule book. So this would be the campaign game. And I'm assuming we have a map for this in here, which we'll get to momentarily. But this game is outside of the Great Battles system. This is a kind of a side game or an additional game, a different game, in other words. Not specifically based on single battles, because it covers, the map covers the entire Roman Empire world, essentially. And you have various rules here that are not part of, I mean, it is, but it isn't, because this is a campaign game, so it's a little bit different than your individual great battles of history, which we have here in our scenario book. So as you can see, we have, these are the base ones, I suppose, and you have your simple Great Battles of History rules. I actually do have the simple Great Battles of History, and I probably will try to do a video on something from one of these 3 games, or maybe multiple versions of these 3 games. One with the full rule set and one using the simple rule set, just to kind of contrast how they work differently. Here's our rule book. So this one, by comparison to the other 2 that we looked at previously, is a little bit smaller. So this is, 32 pages, 31 pages. You have your sequence of play here on the back, which again looks really familiar based on what we just saw with the other 2. Your leader activation, your orders phase for movement and missile fire, shock combat. You have 2 segments here. Then our momentum phase, which can also go back to the start to activate a new leader, the route and reload phase, and your withdrawal phase. So pretty standard stuff. Again, this is all one system that Mark Herman and Richard Berg designed together. And so they work kind of all the same way, as I mentioned earlier. So here we have the map for Dara, I believe, as I see Dara up here. And I'm pretty klutzy this morning. So here's Taginae from 552. And again, we're still looking at basically the ancient world, the classical world, where armies would find a gigantic plain on which to fight. And so you have some terrain features. We have a hill here and some woods. You have a little compass rose down here indicating north is this way to the left. And then you have Dara on the other half of the map, essentially. So you have basically two different maps on the same map sheet. This one is Dara from 528 CE. Here's the walls of the city of Dara. North on this in this map is up. We have a hill here, and this kind of looks like a trench, maybe, or something. I would have to look at the terrain key. Here we have another map. This map covers. Actually, I didn't look at the back of this one. What do we have on the back of this one? The back of this map actually has Callinicum and Tricameron. So here you can see, if you look at Callinicum, you've got the Euphrates River, which is obviously in Mesopotamia, or Iraq as it is known these days. And you have basically a ford, right? We're talking, this battle was fought in the year 531. So we have a ford here as opposed to having, like, say, a bridge, which is what we would have now. And again, you have a road and another road. And then at the bottom down here, we have some elevation. But basically, this is just a plain, and you fight here with your back to the river, I guess, depending on which side you are, or if you're coming in from this way. So there you have 4 battles on one map sheet, essentially, and this one probably has several as well. So here we have, this would be the naval battle map for Cena Gallica. As I mentioned, I do not own War Galley, so I do not have the rules for this particular scenario. Or I guess it's probably the counters is probably more so what it is. But here we have, this is Cassilinum. That's a mouthful for me. So this one you would play in this orientation, and we have a river here and a road. This has some woods and some elevation, and this would be Cassilinum from 554. Here's our map for Justinian, and actually the Justinian map has a Cataphract game map on the back. So this one is obviously larger. You can see here's Constantinople. We have Rome over here. You have basically the Roman world, kind of a condensed version of it here with, barbarian areas that had been conquered by the barbarians around the fringes from, your Visigoths all the way over here on the left. From your Visigoths over here to the Franks, the Alemanni, the Lombards, Gepids, Slavs, Bulgars, Huns up in the north here. So, and then of course you have Africa, Egypt, Libya, Tripolitania, and so on down here, Sicily, Greece, etc. So this is the Justinian map, which I might try. I might try Justinian just to kind of check that out. That period of history is very interesting to me. So this is the battle of the Utis River, which doesn't really have much terrain on it. In fact, it has basically no terrain on it. It's just kind of clear. This was fought in 447 CE. Obviously, this is the from the Attila module. And now we're into our counter sheet. So this is counter sheet 3. It's a half sheet. And these are Huns at the top. You have some Romans down here. Aelius, Paulius. Looking at the leaders here. Armagiscius, Ardaric. These are Ostrogoths, Burgans, Visigoths. So you have various leaders, etc. Here is sheet number 1, which has Belisarius and Narses here, the two great generals of Justinian. And then the armies. So again, Pretty standard great battles of history type counters. They all look the same. It's all the same system. Here's our markers, our markers essentially. Here we have some naval units, more markers, some actual units down here at the bottom. And then we have here, this is the Justinian counter sheet. So here we have a Belisarius counter as well. And Narses is here too in the corner. You can see their ratings seem to be pretty good compared to the other Roman generals that are in here, or Byzantine generals, I guess would be the proper way to say it. But you have Belisarius and Narses, both, plus additional guys. And then you have other units and so on down here. We have Lombards, Moors, etc. So I will check that game out as well. Now here's our player aid card again. Looks pretty familiar. Movement cost chart, stacking chart. Inside we've got our missile range and results, feigned retreat, clash of spears and swords, shock and superiority, our shock combat results. On the back, cohesion hits, TK and special checks, leader casualty chart, and my favorite, the die roll of doom. This is an identical one. Then we have our Justinian player aid card, which has the sequence of play, Byzantine income, Byzantine army phase, activation, end of turn. Pretty straightforward. Activation phase summary, you got your barbarians, etc. Then we have our second Cataphract player aid card. There are also 2 copies of this. So this one has our leadership checks, army discipline chart, line composition chart, summary of orders and line commands, command summary chart, and so on. Command summary chart. Some more nice illustrations here at the bottom. Our turn chart. Again, this looks just like what we saw in Caesar. We have the game turn chart, our route tracks for the Byzantines and Romans. And then on this one, we have the Huns, Persians, Vandals, Goths, and Franks. That's just single-sided. We got our baggies, and we've got our single 10-sided die. So there you have it. That is the balance of those 3 games, the 3 games that kind of, in my opinion, go together. Not only are they all great battles of history, but they are also all dealing with the Roman Empire or the Roman Republic. So as always, I just want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I thought it would be interesting to see all 3 of these games together. As you know, they're all kind of thematically similar, and they're all from the same series, of course. So you have Spqr, which is the Republic era, the Julius Caesar, which covers the career of Julius Caesar himself, and that transitional period basically from Republic to Empire. And then you have the basically after the Eastern or Western Empire has fallen, the reconquest of it by Justinian, which didn't last very long, but he did manage through his 2 great generals to actually retake the western portion of the empire and reunite the Roman Empire, if only for a brief period of time. So, once again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you found it enlightening, as I mentioned earlier. If you would, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel. I would greatly appreciate that. But even if you don't, I just hope you enjoyed it and found something good here. And so until next time, my name is Joe. This is the Hexed and Countered channel, and happy gaming.